What's up, y'all? Happy Friday. Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. If you're watching live on YouTube and you wouldn't mind hitting a thumbs up, I certainly would appreciate it. Say what's up in the Toyota chat. If you've got any questions, comments, concerns, let it rip, and I'll do my best to address as many as I can. We can always come back around at the end of the show. We've got a lot to dive into. It is a loaded Friday show for you guys. I'm going to play about a 30-minute interview with Kevin Lytle, the Fort Collins, Coloradoan. Had been a couple of months since I'd had him on the show, so I felt like it was time to get his perspective. We chopped it up on all kinds of stuff. We talked about his conversation with Jim Mora. I picked his brain on whether CSU is actually turning a corner in hoops or if it's just a product of the schedule. Truth is probably somewhere in between, if we're being real. But he was great. It was definitely overdue to get him on the show again. I'm appreciative of him giving me a little bit of his time. But here in the beginning, I'm going to react to the Pac-12 schedule. I'm going to give some thoughts on a potentially controversial decision by CSU to move on from the state pride theme, not just in football, but across the board. And at the end, we'll talk some hoops. Big win over Air Force, looking for a little bit of payback against Wyoming. A lot to dive into, though, so we'll just go ahead and get it ripping. Real quick, I will say, the Olympics have been so fun. I was excited coming in. It's been a blast. I got really fired up yesterday watching Brock Nelson score a couple of goals for Team USA. He was kind of a controversial addition to the roster. At one point, he's had a great season. It's fun to have a relevant member of the Avs, though, representing Team USA. It's always been a little bit conflicting for me. I talked about this with Kevin, but Joe Sakic, Patrick Waugh, even now McKinnon and McCarr and Taze, there have been so many great Avs on Canada. It's always felt kind of weird to root against them. But there's something about rooting for Team USA in hockey that gets me going. It's one of the times I feel the most patriotic. Jokingly posted on Twitter the times I'm most patriotic while watching a flyover, usually at a Broncos game, eating a hot dog in any scenario. It's just what we do. Rooting for Team USA, watching the NFL playoffs, the Super Bowl feels very American, World Series as well. And then on kind of a sappier note, when communities come together, because we do want to be a little bit serious every now and then. Shout out my guy, Jamal Murray, participating in his first NBA All-Star weekend since he was a part of the Rising Stars Challenge way back in the day. He's going to go off. I have a feeling he's going to try significantly harder than some of his cohorts, but I love that. You guys remember when it wasn't cool to just not try? You guys remember when it was cool to participate in the All-Star weekend and the dunk contest, and we didn't have no names? It was Vince Carter and Aaron Gordon. As much as I love and respect LeBron, I will say, does kind of feel like the downfall of NBA All-Star Weekend directly coincides with the LeBron era. In defense of these guys, I understand how much money they're making. Nobody wants to get hurt, but I think you can give a C- effort in the game and everybody's going to be okay. Anyways, just my 2 cents on that. Let's talk state pride. Let's talk about whether this is a decision that is timely, which is kind of where I lean, or if it's a big mistake by CSU, which I have seen some fans state. I understand that the uniforms were incredibly popular, still are. I've got one of the original jerseys right here. So let me start by saying I'm not anti-state pride. I remember being in the room the first time I saw the helmets. They were so cool and very timely when they were released. I still think they're one of the more unique alternate designs that CSU has ever done. And obviously they were very popular nationally. You know, you would get a lot of love from the uni swag type accounts. It would gets some love on SportsCenter and that type of stuff for a program that honestly has not had a ton to be celebrated about on the field over the last decade. There's probably a fair argument that stuff like state pride is one of the best things CSU has done in terms of generating positive PR. They're really slick. I will say I probably prefer the original design to what CSU wore this past year. They've made subtle tweaks over the years. They a couple years ago added the state on one side. This past year, they also put the CSU logo in the Colorado flag. It just kind of felt like it was maybe doing a bit too much, whereas the original 2017 design was just a little bit simpler. I felt like it really popped. I'm a big less is more guy when it comes to uniforms. I think it's really easy to do too much, but ultimately, I do think that there is some logic in this decision. I think you'll see some people scoff and be like, oh yeah, the most popular uniforms, just get rid of them. What a dumb move by CSU. Look, they're popular. I get that. I also feel like the Colorado flag craze has certainly peaked by 2026. I remember it kind of started back when I was in high school, like 2011-ish. It feels like, roughly 15 years ago, all of a sudden you started seeing the Colorado design everywhere. It wasn't just a mountain town thing anymore. You've always been able to get a Colorado flag t-shirt in places like Vail and Breckenridge and that kind of stuff. But it became more commonplace. You would see it on water bottles and bumper stickers, and every company had to have their own version of their logo with the Colorado flag. And honestly, it's a great design. I love the Colorado flag. I'm going to rep it in many instances like a ton of locals do. I just feel like at this point, it's a little bit played out. Every sports team in town has done their own version at some point. The first team I really remember kind of leaning into it was the Avalanche, I guess, with their alternate third, which I still think is one of the better interpretations of using it. But it looks like a generic Colorado t-shirt or hoodie that you could buy anywhere. And for CSU, I do think there's an argument that it causes some brand confusion. You turn it on. Who is this? Maybe I sound a million years old right now, but I do think there's something to be said about that. And admittedly, I've kind of gone full circle on the uniform stuff. I was a kid when Oregon started going crazy on the swag, and I remember thinking how cool it was. And I felt stoked when CSU finally got an alternate. I remember when Ag Day started. That's how old I am at this point, at least the alternates. I remember when they first introduced the orange uniform, and thank God they've tweaked those over the years because they've been able to really refine that look and make the orange and green pop. Kind of looked like a pumpkin in their early stages of the process. I understand that you got to have some swag. I understand like it's big for recruiting. I do think that Snow Days is going to be sticking around. It does seem like that logo has been a hit with a lot of the recruits of late. You saw a lot of them use that for the photos that they posted. Some of that also might have been intentional, knowing that, state pride was going to be going away. But to me, it just feels like it's the right time to leave it in the past. I think going into the Pac-12, you're really trying to lean into the green and gold branding. You're trying to elevate that look as much as you can. And a big part of that is going to have to be, do you win? That's the thing about some of the biggest brands in college football. They're pretty simple and they don't stray from their identity very frequently, but they're iconic because of the success that they have on the field. And the more you win, the cooler that uniforms seem. Like, the truth is for all of the investment that CSU has put into being a swaggier type football program over the last 10 years or so, they haven't backed it up with the results on the field. So as sharp as you look, you start getting in a situation like I've got the white helmet with the bones in the background here, where you just start associating it with a bunch of losses. And it's not the uniform's fault. It's not like that helmet is the reason they lost any of those games. I think there's something to be said about leaning into your own brand and trying to elevate that as much as you can. Admittedly, again, I have kind of gone full circle on all this. 10 years ago, I would have had a completely different take. And that's why I'm trying to be transparent about all this. The older I get, the more I lean into my old man self. And I get that. But I do think that representing a school's colors, wearing a certain helmet, a uniform, I'm obviously deeply emotionally connected to the just traditional green and gold helmet, because when I grew up, there were a ton of badasses like BVP and David Anderson and Joey Porter and Joel Dreesen wearing it. They were winning a lot. They were having epic clashes against CU. So I do want to add that I think winning is more important than anything, but it's supposed to mean something to represent your school and to wear those colors and to wear that helmet. I just think we kind of lost the plot with everybody trying to keep up with Oregon. Nobody's going to be able to do it as well as them. Maybe it is an old man take, but I do kind of like just flipping on the game and being able to immediately recognize who I'm watching. Like, I think CU wore their traditional uniforms maybe once this entire past season, and they've got one of the better helmets in college football. The just traditional gold helmet is sharp, as is CSU's, traditional green and gold. I do think it's important to keep doing Ag Day. You're still going to do snow days, I believe. So you're going to have some variety there. I would honestly like to see them bring back the green pants more than anything. I miss those, I think, far more than, 2-3 years from now, I'm going to miss state pride. I just think the all green look is kind of iconic, gives you some more options on the road. You can go green, white, green. You can also go gold, white, green. I would love to see it come back for the BYU game as a nice little homage to that epic game they played at Hughes back in 2008. The Rams actually lost that game, but one of the more fun, just random regular season games. More than anything, I just think it's time. It was a fun tradition. It was well embraced. It was era appropriate. But now the Colorado flag trend is a little bit played out. It feels a little bit basic and generic, causes a little bit of brand confusion, doesn't look anything like your school's colors. Now we don't have to listen to people complain about them wearing against teams with blue in their uniforms anymore, even though that was essentially 90% of the league. You still pulled them out before CU did, so you always get to hang that over their head if they ever break out their own iteration of a state pride theme. Ram fans get to mock them and say, oh, we did it first. You're just copying us. You've always got that in the bag. I just don't think you need 15 different combos for 12 game season. I just think it got to a point where, and this was really kind of pre Jay Norvell because he was more of an old school type coach. But I felt like late in the Bobo era, like it became irregular to just wear the traditional green and gold. Like they were wearing the white all the time. They were throwing out all kinds of different combinations, and there just didn't really seem to be any identity. And I'm not a branding or marketing genius, but I do know that brand confusion is something that you're consistently trying to avoid. And while I understand the value and the swag of it all, and it's fun to get love on Sports Center, as an old school college football purist, I just kind of appreciate that they're leaning more into that original identity. And I think the more you win, the more it's going to pop. So that's where I stand with it. I understand it's going to be controversial. I understand there's just going to be people who are pissed that they're going away. That's fair. Honestly, like if they were going to do another alternate, one of my favorites they ever did was the Vegas Bowl, where you had the white jersey, the orange trim with the green, you got the Aggie A on the sleeve. I would love to see a version of those come back. I just like leaning into your actual school colors more. I know it's an old man take. I'm an old man. You guys are going to have to deal with it. I pissed off the kids when I gave my Cosmos pizza takes as well, which is that it's fine. Would I eat a piece of Cosmos pizza? Without a doubt. But it gets propped up as one of the best pizza places in Fort Collins, and I wouldn't even have it in the top 5. It feels highly overrated to me. That's not to say I wouldn't eat it. It's just, it's overrated. And state pride, it peaked. It was fun. It was era appropriate. Now we can move on. You can still sell the blue hoodies if you want. You can still rep them. I've got a state pride polo. I've got a cool state pride themed CSU hoop shirt that my guy Evan Tynan sent me before the season. I'm not saying like you just throw all that stuff out and burn it. And it was obviously a huge success. I just think that trends change, eras change, and you've got to be willing to move on. I've got the white helmet in the past. That was a fun moment. I've got the Vegas Bowl jersey. It was a fun moment. Even these jerseys, from the Bobo era, I thought the horn was really cool. I'd actually be okay with bringing those back. They were pretty slick, but I think CSU has simplified things in recent years. I think they've leaned more into their green and gold identity. And while it is something that was fun and well liked, I just think the Colorado flag as a whole was kind of overdone after a while. So that's my 2 cents. You don't have to agree. I'll give some thoughts on the schedule. We'll get into that interview with Kevin Lytle. Let me take a quick breather real quick and shout out a couple of our awesome partners. All right, I want to talk to you about Branded Bills. If you are looking for a way to make your brand stand apart, look no further than Branded Bills. They've got you covered with the best custom headwear in the game. If you're looking for snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, tees, you name it, they do it. They're going to have you covered with performance and style. Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear around. All you got to do is start your order. Their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel that you need. I understand it can be kind of a pain in the ass, you know, if you're looking to get some custom hats, you don't know if the company you're using is trustworthy. What is the actual quality of the product going to be? With Branded Bills, you don't have to. They've got great high quality hats, rock them all the time. We use them at ALLCITY. Red Hawk Roofing, I believe, uses Branded Bills for some of their custom gear as well. And of course, they've got a partnership with Colorado State as part of their campus collection. Been seeing more and more of the Branded Bills CSU hats on campus, which you love to see. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Fellas, Valentine's Day is coming up. You're going to have to get it right for date night. Some of you might be having to take your significant other out after the border war on Saturday afternoon. Why don't you take them to Benihana? They've got an awesome happy hour specials, $3, $6, $9. Includes specialty rolls, cocktails, premium bites, Monday through Friday. Hit them up. You could still go today. Get ahead of the curve at the Denver and Broomfield locations. Happy hour runs from 3 to 6 p.m. Guys, remember, it's not just dinner. It's kind of like getting dinner in a show. The hibachi grill is the field. The show happens right in front of you. It's more than just a meal. It's an experience. Highlights include the shrimp toss, the onion volcano, and of course, the beating heart fried rice, a classic. They are open on all holidays, including Valentine's Day. They've got all kinds of little promos going from the 9th through the 16th, so don't miss out on that. Right now, it's the Wagyu of the world going on. Try some of the most premium steaks from all around the world, seared in front of you from Japan, Australia, USA. Even better when you finish them with some of our favorite butters, from hot honey to lobster, Wagyu, unami, or truffle. Don't miss out on this awesome opportunity. Make your reservation. Find out more at benihana.com. All right, y'all. I am going to try not to go too long on this because I want to get to that interview with Kevin Lytle. I did want to give just a couple of takes on the Pac-12 schedule, which was released Wednesday night. Kind of a little nod to the Pac-12 After Dark slogan, which became so infamous in the 2000s. Definitely kind of a Twitter era thing, but it was fun. A lot of late night action, exciting matchups. I'm sure the next iteration of the Pac-12 is going to try and lean into that identity. Why fix what's not broken? Obviously, we knew the non-conference schedule. The first 3 games of the year, all at Canvas, huge. Wyoming, Southern Utah, BYU. It's imperative for CSU to get off to a hotter start than we've seen in recent years. The Rams haven't gone into October with a winning record since 2017. I mean, it's been year after year, wake me up when September ends. A 2014 type start, 6-1, 7-1, something like that. It would just go so far in generating some buzz. You already have a lot of storylines interweaved in with a week 1 border war, the dynamic of leaving your longtime conference mate behind in Wyoming. They're going to have the added motivation of trying to spoil, the Jim Mora debut on top of the realignment dynamics. You got BYU coming to town for the first time in over a decade. I mean, it's a really fun first 5 weeks of the season. Wyoming, Southern Utah, BYU at home. Then you go to UTSA, which the Rams have done before, but kind of a unique road trip. Oregon State at home in the Pac-12 opener on October 3rd, opening the Pac-12 exactly like you opened up the Canvas Stadium era. Hopefully the outcome is a lot like it was on that 2017 game. It was really competitive for the first half, and then CSU just beat the shit out of them in the second half. The bye comes on October 10th, well placed. You play the first 5 weeks of the season, basically get it at the halfway mark. The last thing you want is like a 2023 type scenario where you get it week 2 and then you play 11 straight weeks. Genuinely one of the dumber schedules that the Rams have ever had. But I feel like it played out pretty favorably, all things considered. There's never going to be the perfect schedule that doesn't have anything you could find a reason to, complain about or want to tweak. But I think the balance is pretty good in terms of the teams you get at home. Opening against Oregon State feels pretty desirable. We'll see how good they are. Doesn't feel like they're going to be great. They've really cut back spending on their program, which is interesting. Makes sense. You're making less revenue than you once did, but it's also hard to continue to be competitive if you pull back your investment. That's a winnable game at home. Going to Texas State, I mean, it feels like an opportunity potentially, especially if you were to capitalize with a hot non-conference start, to really generate a lot of positive traction over the first half of the season. You get Boise State and San Diego State, probably the best 2 teams on paper, at least in the preseason, both at home. That's huge. I will say November is tough. Boise at home, followed by Wazoo, Fresno back-to-back is a tough stretch. And then we'll see what happens the last week of the season. Week 13 is going to be a flex game. I wrote about this for DNVR Diehards. The idea is give yourself some flexibility late in the season to best maximize your opportunity for CFP inclusion. That's what all these leagues are trying to do. I don't love the idea of playing a second game against a league opponent you've already played in the regular season, but I do think in terms of your realistic options, this made a lot of sense. Like, why spend money on a bye game against a crappy opponent nobody's going to care about? This is a simpler process for everybody in the league. It allows you to be a little bit creative. But I do think that expansion is necessary and is coming before 2027. So we'll kind of see what happens. But the flex scheduling stuff, I do think there could be an element of that you work in the future. Basically everybody other than the Big Ten and the SEC is trying to fight, scratch, claw their way into the playoff, try to get as many bids as possible. I wonder if you see some elements of it down the line, because it makes sense to give yourself some flexibility. There's always teams that underperform. There's always teams that are so much better than you expect. Having the ability to tweak things is huge. I will say, although it's tentatively a home game against Texas State, technically that game could get flexed to either Boise State, San Diego State, or Oregon State, all of which you already play at home. So you could end up with 2 home games against the second opponent. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see how it's actually implemented. Like what do you do in terms of like protecting a team who's at double-digit wins versus somebody who's at 5-6 and desperately needs a win to get bowl eligibility? Would you sacrifice that lamb in order to give yourself a better opportunity of making the playoff? There's also an argument that a bad loss could cost a team playoff position. So again, it'll be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out. But all things considered, I like the schedule. You open against Oregon State, then you have a bye at Texas State, San Diego State at home on the 24th, at Utah State on Halloween, Boise at home on the 7th, then at Wazoo, at Fresno State, November 28th. You close with a home game tentatively against Texas State. We shall see what happens there. I'm really excited for this slate. As much as it's been kind of an annoying process over the last 18 months, all the speculation, all the back and forth between the Mountain West and the Pac-12, it is a fun new era. This is a really fun schedule for the fans. I mean, looking at the teams you get at home, this is one of the better home slates CSU's had in a while. Wyoming, BYU, Oregon State, San Diego State, Boise State, and we'll see potentially Texas State, potentially one of those other teams. That's a really good home slate comparatively. That's awesome for season ticket holders, people that are actually going to be in the stands, and some decent road trips. I ranked them. Kevin Lytle posed this question to fans. How would you rank the road trips? I think Texas State's the most desirable. You're close to Austin and San Antonio, good food scene, good weather that time of year. Feels like a good time to go versus UTSA in September, still probably going to be a little bit hot. Would be cool to see the Alamo Dome. It's a new trip too. Texas State is a new trip for Ram fans. So I think that's the most intriguing. I would probably put UTSA 2, I guess, just because of the uniqueness of it. Fresno, I put 3. It's kind of a pain to get there. It's a really small airport. It's certainly not the best city that I've ever been to, but I've had fun experiences there. It's an old stadium, but Fresno fans really turn up. There's some fun breweries. The food is good. I've enjoyed my trips to Fresno, despite it being kind of a boring city. Again, that's probably like a classic boring JTM take. I put Utah State at 4 because of the convenience. Logan is gorgeous. It's a drivable trip. You might get some leaf peeping in, although by Halloween, probably trending towards colder weather. Might be a little late for that. There's not a ton to do in Logan if you're not into the outdoors, but it is one of the prettier places I've ever been. And the reason I put Wazoo 5th, I've never been there, to be fair. It's just really a pain to get there. I've looked into trying to get there in the past. I would assume in November it's going to be a cold, rainy mess. So, like, an expensive, inconvenient trip to freeze your butt off in the rain doesn't sound super appealing to me from the fans' perspective. I have heard, though, that Pullman is actually a pretty cool college town. So that's not to say that it's a bad trip destination or anything like that. I just don't think that Pullman in November is the most appealing of scenarios, if I'm being real. But I'm excited. I'm really excited for this schedule. I keep coming back to the importance of a hot start. I mean, we emphasized that with Jay Norvell this past year and talked about what could potentially happen and what ultimately did happen if they didn't. But it just feels like every single year we come into the season with such excitement. And by October, we feel like Charlie Brown trying to kick the football. And I'm just tired of it. And I know that it's going to be tough because you've had a lot of turnover, but it's not 2010 anymore. The expectation is to compete right away. And I mean, Jim Mora has kind of set that precedent. He's gone on record and said, our goal is to win the Pac-12 championship in year one. Probably was feeling himself a little bit. And he even kind of joked about how, well, I mean, I put it out there, so I've kind of got to lean into it now. I'm not going to try and run away from it. But if you can get some positive momentum, I mean, a 4-1 start would be huge. BYU is going to be a tough opponent. I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12. That's tough. You do have some familiarity given, Matt Mitchell came over from there. So you have some knowledge of, Bear Bachmeier, their quarterback, what they're trying to accomplish schematically. That's a nice little win. But Wyoming, obviously, you've always got to win that game. Southern Utah, if they lose to another FCS team at home, I'm going to rip my hair out. But go on the road and beat UTSA. That's not a daunting road scenario. It's not a crazy scenario. Oregon State at home, that's a winnable game. Texas State on the road, that's a winnable game. I mean, you arguably have an opportunity to be bowl eligible before you even get into the toughest part of the schedule, which is probably November. But I mean, even San Diego State, you got to respect them. Going to Utah State, we'll see. But Bronco Mendenhall's a great coach. I would be surprised if they're not at least somewhat formidable, competitive at the very least. But again, like, that's a winnable game. And then we'll see what happens in November. Historically, at least over the last 2 decades or so, the Rams have not done a good job of capitalizing when they've been in a position to play for a conference championship. Most recently, 2024, blowing that game at Fresno. 2017, losing to Boise, Air Force, and Wyoming in consecutive weeks. Still one of the more frustrating stretches I can recall. But even 2014, as fun as that season was, you're sitting there at 10-1 with an opportunity to play your way into the conference championship. Unfortunately, Jim McElwain had one foot out the door at that point. Lost a winnable game against a really good Air Force team, to be fair. That year was stacked in the league. Air Force was a 10-win team. CSU, Boise, Utah State all won 10-plus games. Like San Diego State won 10-plus. I mean, it was a good year for the league. And unfortunately, the Rams drew some tough teams. They had to play Utah State, Boise, and Air Force because that was still when it was a divisional format. But man, it would just be so much fun to see CSU rise to the occasion for once and finally strike while the iron is hot. You thought that the addition of Canvas Stadium was going to be this groundbreaking thing for CSU, and it was going to be, a corner that you're able to turn, figuratively as a program, and instead it just is not proven to be that. Like, I credit the fans. They've shown up, especially post-COVID. I do think there was a time late in the Bobo era, partially in the Adazio era, where it dipped a little bit. But post-COVID, the students have turned out in masses. The fan support's been there. I'm tired of dealing in hypotheticals with CSU. There is so much to offer from an institutional standpoint. Fort Collins is an incredible place to live. It is. You have the facilities there's no reason that CSU cannot swim in higher circles, but for whatever reason, they have not been able to capitalize. And the one thing that has me really excited and maybe even delusional is that I know you have an admin that's wholeheartedly committed in athletic success, really for the first time ever. Like Tony Frank was a big reason why the stadium happened, along with Jack Graham, obviously. But I mean, I just think back to what if CSU had invested and really gone all in football during the heart of the Sonny Lubick era, instead of continually making him accomplish more with less. They could have been Utah. They could have been BYU. Even TCU lapped them. I mean, it's a shame. It really is. But it's kind of now or never, right? Like with the way that college football is trending, this either works out and it's a success, or you get left behind and you spent a whole lot of money in pursuing this. And that'd be a bummer, but it is on the table. Let's get to that conversation with Kevin Lytle. Let's shout out a couple of our partners, and we'll get into that. I want to talk to you about Taco Bell, the Luxe Value menu specifically. It delivers bold, irresistible flavor at unbelievable prices with a lineup of crave-worthy items, all under $3. I love that. From savory classics to indulgent new favorites, each item is crafted to satisfy big cravings without a big spend. These uniquely craveable items are available every day. While some value menus lack flavor or uniqueness, Taco Bell's Luxe Value menu is filled with innovative products that only Taco Bell can deliver. Try the new Chipotle Ranch Chicken Stacker. Try the mini taco salad. They got the beefy potato loaded griller back. I am a big loaded griller, guys. For the record, the chips and nacho supreme dip, you really can't go wrong with Taco Bell. It's a lot of the same stuff over and over again. The thing is, they never miss. You're like, how can they keep doing this? How can they keep creating new things out of the same 5 food items? That's what Taco Bell does, baby. They always deliver. Nobody delivers everyday value and supports your hometown teams like Taco Bell, Liv, Moss. I also want to shout out our friends over at Toyota, keeping our awesome producer Tiff on her toes. Did that in the wrong order, my bad. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. They built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. Toyota offers 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from. Try the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. And that's what makes them so perfect for Colorado living, guys. You can explore the road less traveled. You can go off-roading. You can hit the ski slopes. You can go on statewide, trips. I got to do that a couple times a year, going over the western slope. But you can do so without, sacrificing that fuel mileage. You've got all-wheel drive capability. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics. They're the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. All right, I appreciate all of you guys in the Toyota chat. Keep the comments rolling. I want to get to that conversation with Kevin Lytle, though. I was about a half hour. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Here is part 1 of that interview. First things first, man. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you. I want to start, though, because it's the Olympics. I feel like we got to talk about it a little bit. If you could win gold in any Olympic sport, like let's just say hypothetically you could become the top athlete and take gold in any sport of your choosing, what would it be?
Dang, that's a good one. I'll just keep it to winter right now since those are on mind. I don't know. I feel like one of those ski jump ones would be pretty sweet. Like what's it, freestyle, where you do the moguls, then hit the jump with the trick. Like you're pretty cool if you can do that, and I'm not pretty cool. So at least as far as individual goes, I mean, I was a hockey player, so I guess collectively that would be pretty cool. But like, if you're gonna give me whatever power, I might as well just go full ego and make it just about me and do one of the singles. So yeah, one of those like the ski and jump skill ones would be pretty fun, and it's just crazy impressive. I can't fathom how they do that.
That's how I feel about the big air events, because I can ski, but I can't do that. Like, yeah. I don't even have the whatever it takes deep inside of you to even think about trying something like that. So I'd probably
Yeah.
pick something like that.
Yeah, totally. Like I can do moguls. I can't do them like that. I can sort of kind of do little jumps. Certainly not like that. And then combine them. Nah, that's crazy talk. So
I
yeah,
feel
give me
like it'd
that
be
one.
cool to do like half pipe or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd
The
be
thing
sweet
about
too.
some of those sports, they're so specialized. I feel like you'd have to, it'd be like the training process to be a speed skater. Where do you even find a rink to train like that?
Yeah, couldn't even tell you. It's yeah, like half pipe is cool. That's one like I am a skier, so I think in that mindset. I know they have half pipe skiing, but no offense, I just think it's a cooler as snowboard event.
Yeah, for sure.
So like my ski brain doesn't quite go there, but that'd be fun too.
I'm all into it. I'm hopeful the U.S. can win gold in at least one of the hockey, competitions. We'll
Can I
see.
share like a super hot take here that might get me in trouble?
Oh, I like it.
On the men's side, I kind of want Canada.
As an
Like,
Avs
and
fan, it makes sense.
yeah, I mean, and that's where it's bred from. Like, it's not an anti-American thing. It's just Canada obviously has a lot of great Avalanche players, and historically, as a kid growing up, that's been the case. I mean, I watched Sakic win gold. There've been obviously one. There just so many great Avs were also Canadian, not surprisingly. So like as a kid, you attach to the players from your team, and then when they go international, like it's like, well, I don't necessarily know these American players that much, but I sure know Joe Sakic. So yeah, it's bred from that. Like I think they're obviously a super fun team to watch. So yeah, I won't be like heartbroken if Canada wins the men's. I do want the American women to win. They're incredible. I mean, holy cow, they look amazing.
I think that makes sense. I mean, I root for Serbia just because Nikola Jokic is my favorite athlete of
Yeah,
all
it's in
time,
that vein.
probably.
Yeah, yeah. So
It doesn't
I
help
mean,
that the
like I
U.S.
say, I
men's
don't
team's
think
not likable either, like the
I was gonna say
Kachucks
like
and
there aren't a lot of guys on that squad that like just watching hockey I terribly love. Whereas if Makar and McKinnon and Taves can go rock out, I'm certainly not gonna be mad about it. So
I
I don't
know
know if that's a hot take or not. I'm
no,
not
I
trying to
don't
make
think
this like a
so.
political thing either, but um, like I say, it's just from the players and connections. Like it'd be fun to watch those guys win.
I know it drives some of the more old school guys crazy. I've seen Terry go on rants about it before, but just as somebody who was deeply influenced by the movie Miracle growing up, there's just something about rooting for U.S. hockey, even
Yeah,
if it's at the
yeah, and
detriment of my
hey, I mean
guys.
that's like one of my favorite movies ever. So no, I'm not like against it. I would certainly love a U.S. Canada gold medal game. I
It'd
think
be
that's
more
a
fun if
big
Russia
win.
was in the field. I will say that.
Yep. Again, take politics out of it, just from a hockey competitive standpoint. Obviously, they would have a great team, and there have been some classic ones through the years.
Hmm.
Before Russia was taken out. So yeah, just hockey wise, that'd be a lot of fun.
Just want the best of the best, but I wanted to obviously get you on because you've been a busy guy. I mean, hoops is in the full swing of things. You had an interview with Jim Mora that's producing a ton of content, which we're all enjoying. I want to pick your brain on that. But the Pac-12 schedule was released. Kind of an interesting move with the Week 13 flex scheduling. I do see the logic in it, but I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on that element?
Yeah, it's interesting. What I wrote today is I'm not sure I would be down with it if it were the long term plan, but it's not. I get the Pac-12 obviously can't say right now like, oh, this is a 1 year thing because we know we're planning to add people, but like let's all be real, that is the plan. So as a 1 year sort of random, we've got sort of a weird fit here. We need to be creative. I think it's good. I like thinking outside the box. I think college football does not do that enough. So I like that in that standpoint. And it's gonna give the league the best chance to get a CFP team because if team A from the Pac is neck and neck with team B from the American come week 13, you can schedule whichever way you need. And it could be different ways. It could be, we just need to make sure that team wins. so let's give them an easy game. Or it could be we need them to boost their metrics, so let's give them the toughest game we can, and then you have to win your way in, but that gives you that chance as well. So it gives you some maneuverability, which could come really handy, because how often have we seen since the kind of the G5, G6 spot is open, that come the final weeks, it's there's a toss-up, like it can happen. So I like that flexibility and creativity under the thinking and assumption that it's also a short-term thing.
Yeah, I mean, in principle, I don't love the idea of playing the same team twice in the regular season. And
totally.
Theoretically, you could play the same team 3 times if they matched up like a Boise State and I'll just say CSU, like for the sake of argument.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say they were the Pac-12 championship representatives, like there could technically be a scenario and where they played twice at Canvas and then played again for a third time at either in Canvas or Boise. That could get a little bit wonky.
Right.
I am curious, I guess, in the future if they keep an element of flex scheduling just for the flexibility of giving yourself leeway to get into the playoff. I also don't know how that would work if you expanded in the future, like what would be the circumstances. But I'm with you. I like that they're at least thinking outside the box and not just, all right, we'll throw an FCS team on the schedule or something like that.
Yep, exactly. I like that. And, it gets kind of costly if you're having to do purchase a buy game late on.
That
and,
too.
Frankly, most of the random additions that would have been made wouldn't have been very interesting, to be frank, from a fan standpoint, from a build a resume standpoint, any of that. So, yeah, again, right with you, don't love the idea of, playing teams in your conference twice in a year. But for a 1 year, like it's a fairly creative way to handle a maybe not ideal, number situation.
What does your gut say? Does the league expand before the 2027 season?
Yeah, I don't have any like super insider info, but I'll be pretty stunned if this is the same group in 2027. Now, who that is or how many beats me.
Yeah,
obviously, like you keep seeing, the UNLV name keeps coming up. I don't fully. I guess there are just so many complicated layers, with the various lawsuits and everything. But yeah, I think one way or another, I'll be surprised if the pack is the exact same in 2027 as it is right now.
I think we may have broached on this way back when the initial move to the Pac-12 was announced. But I do think that while expansion is inevitable and necessary, there is a real incentive in the Pac-12 staying lean, and people get too wrapped up in the concept of what this looks like in just 2026 when this is really like a 10-year plus play. Like you're trying to establish the conference knowing that realignment is a never-ending process. Who knows what could happen down the line, but I don't think there's a lot of value in, you see people throwing out, especially now that North Dakota State was scooped up, you see a lot of people being like, just go get both Montana schools and all of these random members. That feels like a quick way to get to 16 random teams with a bunch of teams feeling like, what do any of you bring to the table here? It's just splitting the pie too many ways.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, as far as like those, potential FCS moves up, I mean, North Dakota State's been in power, but if you look at how much they spent on football, I think last year is about half of what most of the Mountain West teams spent, and I think even more than some of the ones that are leaving for the Pac. So that's a huge gap, and that's without even factoring in buyouts and things that those teams would need to pay to get out and then to move up. So the finances don't make much sense, and yeah, it's looking down the road part is really interesting because everyone I talk to thinks that there's more big realignment coming in sort of the 2030, 31 range, because that's when all the big conferences are coming to expire a new deal. So that's going to be a big round. And so some of this is about building the pack to, become the pack again, but some of it is these schools making sure that they're ready if someone does come calling and operating in that way. So there's sort of a short and long-term view too of like, hey, sort of selfishly, individually as a program, let's go be really good for the next few years and see if we get a call. And then while doing that, on on the other hand, we're working to build the pack so that if we're not invited or whatever, build the pack up to make sure it's that fifth. I think obviously they all want the pack to become, the fifth power once again. I also think, I think they understand that that's probably highly unlikely as well. So you're kind of working a lot of different ways right now that a lot of them work together. I mean, the end result or main thing is you need to be good, basically. Yeah. You need to invest and be good. So those all work together. But yeah, there's a lot of different layers to how they might look at building. And yeah, I think the idea of like, oh, we just need more teams is definitely not one of them.
Kind of in that vein, one of the things that I wrote about in my kind of schedule takeaways, and you could say the same thing most years, but it does feel like with this schedule, especially all the layers, you're in the first year in the Pac-12, coming off of a disappointing year, and just all of the factors in college football as a whole, like the gaps becoming wider, between the haves and have-nots. It does feel like this year, next year, like it's never been more pertinent for CSU to capitalize and find some success, because it could be exactly what's needed to like really reinvigorate the fans, and the sport's been great, but like to really get people to buy in. Or it also could kind of be like that final fatal blow where after 20 years of being sold hypotheticals, you get a fan base that just kind of reaches its breaking point. Like there just becomes a feeling of inevitability of we just can't swim in those circles anymore.
Yeah, no, it's a huge year. You have, the excitement of Jim Mora and, a big name that has had success, all that. The pack, just the way the schedule falls. I mean, September is crazy of a boatload of home games, especially early. So that brings both opportunity, but pressure as well. So yeah, I think in just so many ways, this is just a huge, huge year for CSU and CSU football. Like, I'm not saying it's, 10 games or, 10 wins or a failure, but they definitely need to make some hay because there are opportunities there. I think the schedule fell fairly kindly. Getting Oregon State at home early to start conference play, I think is, if you got to, if you were CSU and you got to pick your first Pac game, that may be the one you pick. So yeah, November is hard, back to back at Washington State and at Fresno State right after playing Boise State at home. That's tough, but that's why got to win early and stack those wins. So yeah, absolutely. Thinking when I talked to Jim Mora, he kind of said that he's like, right now, we're sort of asking for blind faith from people of, we need you, but I know I can't really show you anything right now because obviously they haven't played any games. But he's like, we've got to go earn it. The best way to build it is to win and earn that trust. And we've got to do that and do it at home. Particularly, he was very poignant about that of we got to win at home. And again, everyone says that, but you look at UConn, what was, I think like 11-1 over the last 2 years at home or something like that. And overall in his 4 years, I think it's like 18-7. So a pretty good record. They're really good at home. And that's at a place that, I'm not could say it's probably not the biggest home field advantage in the world, but they made it one. So yeah, take care of business at Canvas. Weber, Sidwell, they've made it very clear, the 7 home games thing is their plan. So if you have 7 home games, you win 6 or 7 of them each year, you're in a pretty good spot.
I wanted to ask you about that, and I know you're still releasing content from it. You don't want to necessarily give away everything, but what stood out the most to you that you're willing to talk about from that conversation with Jim Mora?
Yeah, no, I think more, kind of big picture rather than just minutia of detail was you can see the CEO aspect. Like he knows what he wants to do. He's detailed, supremely detailed in everything he's doing, confident in what he's doing. I don't want to make this like a Mora versus Norvell thing, but just to use an example of like Jay came in as an air raid coach and then kind of abandoned that. Like, I don't think you're going to see that where, I wouldn't say Mora is as stylistically defined as Norvell was. But I guess my point is like, he knows exactly what he wants his program to be. And again, that, depending on the roster, the actual on the field part might be a little different as far as, X's and O's how they play. But he just knows the structure of what he wants to do. That's what comes with being however many years head coach he's been at both the NFL and college level. He has some really fascinating just connections through the game, which again comes from working both a long time and in different levels. But yeah, he knows exactly what he wants to do. He seems right now very open. I mean, he's been pretty open, honest. I even asked him, there's the thing about Wyoming. Savell saying they're going to close practices because you don't know who might be watching. I asked him directly that of like, hey, Wyoming's closing because you guys are their first opponent. Like, what's your view? And I don't have the quote in front of me, but basically it was, we don't spend 1 second worrying about anyone else, especially this time of year. He's like, if they want to come down and watch, come on down. We'll get them a seat on the 50-yard line. They can watch our whole practice. Like, the basic gist was, it's spring. We do not care. Like, it's not like game planning. It's, reps and preparation, everything. So even that I thought was kind of funny. And he doubled down and he kind of leaned in and said, you can put this in there. We're not worried about anyone else. So he's confident in what he's doing for sure.
That's refreshing. I mean, I think there was a long time too, just Bobo and McElwain coming from the SEC. I think there was a different level of paranoid, but it just, at times, some of these coaches act like they're finding the cure to cancer, or like doing rocket science here. I mean, I think people have an idea of what you're going to do either way.
Yeah, totally. And that's the vibe I got of like just the confidence of like, I don't think he's going to share everything in the world, but just confidence of, don't need to play silly games over stuff like closing a spring practice because you're paranoid about your week 1 opponent. Like, it's just silly. We've watched spring practices. There are not like extreme hidden details there that you could, find if you send a scout.
Totally. Like, obviously they don't want Wyoming people there the week of the game.
Totally.
And, seeing your scheme and stuff, but it cracks me up. I do think that confidence and the way they're operating is probably reassuring for the fans to hear. I know you recently released a piece kind of on his mentality and mindset, with the quarterback play. I highly encourage everybody to go check that out. Obviously, subscribe to the Coloradoan, support local journalism. What kind of stood out to you, though, about his takes on the quarterback? I mean, obviously, he's somebody who's had some really unique QBs over the years. I mean, Michael Vick is probably the best example of that, but what stood out in that element?
Yeah, I mean, I started, obviously we had all, sort of put together as they're signing the high school kids they signed and then the transfers they got. Like, okay, these are not, you're stand in the pocket and sling it quarterbacks. Like, these guys are mobile. So I just kind of asked, where's that come from? Well, first I said, I assume I'm right in that you're looking for some quarterback mobility, because you don't want to assume. He said, yeah, of course. He says 3 biggest sort of offensive influences or quarterback influences in his life: Bill Walsh, Steve Young, and Mike Vick. Bill Walsh, obviously legendary Niners coach, and then he was GM in various roles with the Niners. Steve Young, obviously Hall of Famer with the Niners. Mora worked with them both in his time with the Niners, and then he was the Falcons coach, kind of in Vick's heyday, I think you could say, before everything else happened. Vick, for my money, the most dynamic athlete to ever play quarterback in NFL history, I feel. But yeah, he said that's a huge part of it. And he kind of he referenced his defensive coordinator background of, as a DC, he hated facing a mobile quarterback. He said just creates so many headaches that are hard to account for. Again, it's just the numbers game. And so obviously as a head coach, you want to take the headaches you faced as a DC and make them for opposing DCs. And so, yeah, that's what he looks for. And he says, it doesn't mean all these guys are going to be runners or going to be run around like Mike Vick, or, putting up 1,000-yard rushing seasons or anything like that. It's just the ability to, maybe run, but keep plays alive with your legs. I think, he's kind of referencing Steve Young, and, he made a lot of plays sort of off script, escaping the pocket, throwing out of the pocket, things like that, where again, a defense, like, sure, you may have shut down the initial plan, but then they move on to the second bit and you just can't handle it that long. So it's a lot of that. So yeah, I think we'll see, some of the outside zone running where a quarterback can pull it and slip out the backside and stuff like that, but just the ability to keep it live. So yeah, I mean, the quarterback play, It's just going to be different. It's going to look different than what we've seen at CSU because that's not really a thing that's existed, like in little bits here and there, but it has not been a consistent theme or weapon in a long time.
Really, since BVP. I mean, early Grayson could run around a little bit, and you've had guys that could move that weren't
Colin Hill for a
statues.
minute before he got his first ACL.
But it's certainly not been like a, man, look at this dynamic athlete back there who can just take over a game potentially with his feet. This is a your gut call. I think most people are operating under the assumption that Haas Haney will be the heavy front runner to start. But what do you feel about that? Do you think it'll be a true competition, or just kind of how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I did ask more directly just because might as well. And yeah, he said not saying anything now. He also said he thinks depth charts are dumb and doesn't care about them or worry about them. But you can say, yeah, obviously you need someone to be first in line when spring starts. Didn't say who. Yeah, my guess would be Haas Haney is kind of your front runner. I think it'll be competition. It's related, but unrelated, but related. He was pretty specific about like, yeah, he's aware of, some of the money and everything, but he doesn't want, and this is very similar to what Norvell said, he doesn't want a deep relationship to the money and how the roster is built because he doesn't want anyone to believe that, that is deciding who starts because it doesn't. He said, your playing time has to be earned, all that jazz. So yes, I think no doubt Hassani's the most high profile. I would guess that's probably reflected in NIL or whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's a guarantee. He did say that he thinks it should be a really competitive spring. Just not only do you have all these guys, they're all young too. Like Darius Curry actually has the most collegiate experience of any of them. So you have a lot of guys that are pretty hungry to prove themselves. So it's going to be really fascinating. But yes, if you made me pick a star today, I'm very much guessing it's Haas Haney.
I know you've shared a little bit on this, but it does seem like both the administration and the transition process and Mora, since he's come in, have really put a lot of value and stock in Alex Collins.
Yeah. He, I mean, what that opening press conference, he highlighted Alex Collins and his work. I think he did again when we talked to him at Moby that one time shortly after that. I've talked to him since, when we met last week or whenever that was, talked a lot about Alex, and he was saying, they spent hours and hours on the phone that Thanksgiving weekend right after he was hired, kind of just going through the roster and, starting to build sort of a big board, if you will. So yeah, he seems to very highly value Alex Collins' knowledge and role and everything. So yeah, those two, best I can tell, seem to work really well together, even though, Collins was here before.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. I do want to ask you one or two things about hoops, but just kind of putting a bow on football here. I don't remember if we asked this specifically in those first two press conferences, but I assume Tyson will continue to call defensive plays.
Yeah, I guess to be fair, haven't directly asked that, but that is my assumption as well, and everything I understand. So yeah, I guess should officially get that asked. But yeah, that's everything I understand is that Price Tracy on the offensive side and Tyson on the defensive side.
It's been a tough stretch at times for CSU men's basketball. Obviously, there were a lot of new pieces this year from, basically across the board. But I think people were a little surprised to see some of the struggles in league play, even though, it makes sense. It's a good league, first-year staff and everything. But they have won 2 games in a row for the first time in 2 months. Is this team turning a corner, or is this just an instance of you're playing the 2 worst teams in the league?
I feel like it's both. And obviously, it's kind of hard to say it's both. But like the eye tests tell me that they're a little bit more back to what they were. The eye test tells me that they have maybe found the best set of lineup and rotations. There are metrics that suggest that as well. There is 100% the caveat of the opponents, like absolutely 100%, no doubt. We can't crown them yet. We'll learn a lot more Saturday, but I do think like some of the people, I get it's fandom. Like you react heavily to wins and losses, but there, some people in the kind of losing skid acting as if it's just a terrible team with no talent. It's like, I mean, look at November and December. Like those games happen. Those are real. Those are actual games and results that matter too. So yeah, they hit a pretty big wall, bigger than I thought they would. But I'm leaning toward they're getting out of it and are going to make a bit of a run here. I think the next week and a half is huge because it's Wyoming Saturday, which obviously we don't really need to spend much time describing the importance of that, especially given what happened in Laramie. Then UNLV midweek, which is one of those very much toss-up games. That's always a super weird game. There's probably going to be no atmosphere. Yeah, there's probably going to be no atmosphere. UNLV can be great. They can be terrible. They can be in between. Who knows what they'll be. And then San Diego State at home, which I think no doubt San Diego State is better than CSU. But we've seen weird things happen in that game. You presume they'll be able to fill up the arena for it. So I think if you can go 2-1 in those three, you're feeling pretty good. Obviously 3-0, it'd be like, okay, like big time corner turned. 1 and 2 would be frustrating. Obviously anything worse than that, and I guess we would know that it was a mirage. But yeah, I think, like I say, the eye test to me and the metrics to me both say that they're slowly improving because the defense is getting better and the offense looks better. Like, yeah, they hit shots against Air Force Tuesday, whatever day it was, but the ball the last couple games have been moving quicker. They're getting up and down the floor quicker. That was another thing Ali said of like,
that was nice to see.
Let's get moving. We're taking too long to get into the offense, and then that leads to a bad shot. So yeah, I think all of it suggests they're in the right form, but yeah, you have to do it against better teams.
Can anybody hang with Utah State?
I mean, yeah, they're good.
For the record,
and CSU should beat them. I think the thing with them is if you can protect the ball, they're still good. Like they're obviously quite good, but they just live and die so much. Not live and die, but live on turnovers. It just fuels them, both literal points and whatever, but energy. It's kind of like, I was talking to Kyle Jorgensen after the Air Force game. He said, we get energy from hitting threes. He goes, and maybe that's not great, but it's the truth for this team. Like we hit some threes and we get energy. For Utah State, they get a couple steals and it fuels them. I mean, that game in Logan, actually, even the one at Moby, there's parts where they're really struggling. Then they get a couple steals. Then all of a sudden they're hitting tough shots that aren't even off steals, but just gives like a swell of confidence. It's one of those things where metrics don't tell the full human story. So yeah, I think Utah State's beatable. I also would pick them to win the Mountain West tournament.
Well said. Kev, you're the man. Do you have anything that you want to promote as far as your content coming out?
No, just yeah, send that stuff for more. I have a column that just published this morning about sort of him and his wife's vibe and feel in Fort Collins and sort of how that translates, or I guess the responsibility he says he feels to CSU already. So yeah, interesting conversation. And then writing about Hunter Powell, CSU's bobsled Olympian, who I've written about a few times before. Just one of the coolest stories I've ever been able to do, and one of the most unique, interesting people I've ever been able to talk to. So I had a really fun conversation with him a couple weeks ago before he head to Milan. So dropping that before bobsled starts, I think this weekend or early next week, something like that.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I know everybody in Ram Nation is too. Thank you as always for coming on. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. Big one. Jason Smith going to be in town too.
Very cool. Yeah, that was fun little news to see as well.
All right, we have gone long, so the conversation continues at DNVR.com. I do just briefly, before we get out of here, want to give a couple of thoughts on this matchup against Wyoming on Saturday. Coming off of an encouraging showing against Air Force, really shot the ball well, able to outshoot an opponent for the first time in a couple months, really. I mean, Air Force was hot, 12 of 21 from three-point. That's as good of a shooting showing as they've had in a while. But CSU hit 14 threes, which was a sight for sore eyes. second straight game where you have 30 plus points out of your rotation. Does feel like they've kind of cracked what works best for this group. Bringing Jevin Mooney's and Bemba just gives you a steadiness off of the bench, some consistency within your offense. I also feel like they just bring a different level of physicality, which is sometimes needed. It's a nice little change of pace from the starting lineup, but you're also still, emphasizing development with some of your young pieces like Kerry Booth, like Jace Butler, both of which I think are important, both for the current iteration of this team and next season's group, assuming they stick around, which is always a big assumption in 2026. This team's playing with better pace. They're attacking downhill, 20 fast break points. They had a plus 12 advantage against the Falcons the other night. They also got to the free throw line, which is something I've been harping repeatedly. CSU, when they win games, they get to the line. They shot 36 free throw attempts. Take advantage when teams are hacking. Now, I will say the officiating got a little bit bogged down the other night. There's something to be said about that. But it is going to be a big factor. In fact, it's the Xfinity X Factor. This is the Xfinity X Factor presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. You got to get to the line. You had 10 free throw attempts in that loss up in Laramie. Wyoming ranks 351st in the nation in opposing free throw attempts. They give up about 25.3 per game. They've given up 30 or more free throws 8 different times this year. They've given up 40 plus twice. Shockingly, they won both of those games. That breaks my brain. But this is a Wyoming team that can get into foul trouble. They can also, you can turn them over a little bit. I actually think the Rams did a pretty good job of dealing with their top scorers in the last game. Bennett just kind of killed them. But you've got to get to the free throw line. It's massive for CSU. It's massive in a lot of Wyoming's results. That was the Xfinity X Factor presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. I also feel like 75 points is kind of the line you're trying to get to if you're CSU. The Rams have held their opposition sub 75 in 6 straight games. CSU is 11-1 this season when they score 75 or more points, as long as they don't turn the ball over. That's usually an indication of shot making being in a good position. The Rams are working the paint better, even in some of the struggles that they had with turnovers. I do feel like CSU has been able to adjust on the fly better these last couple of weeks than they did early in conference play. They are working the paint more. They're playing inside out, and they're creating good looks. They weren't always falling. I mean, they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a bucket up in Laramie. Really frustrating shooting showing, even against San Jose State. While the process was good, they're getting open looks. You wouldn't be upset about those looks that they were taking. They just weren't falling. Finally, against Air Force, you started to hit some threes. We'll hope to see that carry over here. You've got a lot of home games coming up. Typically, college teams tend to shoot the ball better at home. But this is a really big opportunity for you to prove that you have, in fact, turned a corner and you weren't just benefiting from a lighter stretch in the schedule. Air Force and San Jose State are admittedly terrible. They are. Wyoming's not great, but they play hard and they're playing competitive right now. They gave San Diego State and Utah State everything they could handle in recent play. They lost both those games, but they were right there in it. They're going to play hard. Again, though, they are a team I feel like you can take advantage of and get them into foul trouble. And then obviously from there on, you got to hit your free throws, which that can always be a bit of a roller coaster at the collegiate ranks. You're going to get a good effort from Wyoming. I would hope to see a nice response from CSU after getting punked in that game in Laramie. It wasn't like they got dominated or anything like that. I mean, you shoot even close to your average 3-point rate and you're right there in that game. But it was the first time you've lost Wyoming by more than 10 points in about a decade. So you've got to respond. The crowd's going to be awesome. I hope it's a sellout from CSU's side. I think this is a big opportunity to generate some confidence going into that final stretch of the schedule. I've said it a couple of times now. I'd like to see the team get to 20 wins between the regular season and the Mountain West tournament. You get out to Vegas, you win a game or two, who knows? Anything can happen at that point. We've seen crazier things happen. You are very likely going to have to win 4 games in 4 days to make the tournament, which is most certainly a long shot. But we'll see. I do feel like they're playing better ball of late. They've improved significantly on the defensive side, which is one of the biggest reasons I have hope, because you're going to be able to hang around if you play defense. I mean, there are going to be nights like Wyoming where the shots just aren't falling. But if you play defense, you're going to give yourself an opportunity. And that was actually one of the bigger struggles I felt like early in the Medved era. Getting good looks has not been an issue for CSU with consistency for like 9 years. You got to go back to that maybe the first year of the Medved era, where it was kind of a misfit island of misfit toys with the roster. But they've been getting open looks now for the better part of a decade. It took 2-3 years to really start to see the team trend the right way defensively. They've made big leaps there the last couple of years, and it's been a big reason the Rams have been able to compete, make NCAA tournaments, and even win games. They get good looks. Can they hit them? I like their odds of doing so at home. It's just my gut. Maybe this will come back and its old takes exposed. I think we see a really solid performance from CSU in this one, and I actually kind of think they're going to win the game comfortably, despite Wyoming playing really good basketball of late and playing hard. You got to credit them. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. I've seen some people with questions about realignment. I talked about North Dakota State coming to the league for about 30 minutes on Monday's show, so go check that out if you missed it. I'm also going to start posting some smaller excerpts from interviews on the podcast feed, so Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your audio. Like I'll put the Kevin Lytle interview in there, for instance. I know it's hard for people to have a full hour to tune into the entire show. Maybe you just want to see, what some of the guests have to say. So we'll try some new stuff. We'll get feedback on that, see if you guys are liking it or not. But I really do appreciate everybody for supporting the content. Big things coming. Should be a really fun weekend. Got to get that border war dub. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.